Okay. What are we doing? What are we doing today? Today we're doing look where you're going, and this is mainly you guys don't have the problem of looking where you're going, okay? Because you do look where you're going, and we did this somewhat last year, and we're going to do it again with a little different approach. The problem is students don't look where they're going. They are looking, there's a great need for students to look at the face of their uke or their opponent to see if they're doing the technique correctly. And just to summarize real quickly, if you don't turn your head, you can't turn your body. If you can't turn your body, you can't move your feet. If you can't move your feet, you can't turn your... the technique doesn't work, and then you're wondering why it doesn't work. Okay? And one of the hardest things to get students to do is to say, don't look at their face, look where you're going. Don't, and their other problem is they want to look at, see if they have the technique set correctly. Okay, and that's a major concern, and that has some legitimacy. But you can say to them, you know, set the technique where you think it should be, and then turn. Okay, now, so what we're gonna have you do first, just to have you backtrack a bit, is I want you to get a partner. I don't care. And it's going to have to be an Aikido technique, because you can't do a judo throw and look at your attacker's face to see if it's working unless you're built really weird, okay? And can turn your head 180 degrees. So it's going to have to be a joint lock of some sort, okay? But what I want you to do, and you can do this slowly, okay, is I want you to do any technique you want to part, do any 3 or 4 techniques, and try to do the technique correctly while you are watching your opponent's face. Okay? That's all I want you to do, because I want you to backtrack to where the new student is, and so that you will then have perhaps a better understanding of the frustration they're facing when you say to them, turn your body, move your feet, what have you, and they don't get it why they're having problems doing the technique. Okay, so just get another body and do any. We got plenty of mat room. We got 1, 2, 3 teams. Just do any 3 or 4 techniques, once or twice a piece, but watch your opponent's face during the entire technique and see if it's possible to actually execute the technique anywhere remotely correctly. Okay, so just find a partner. And I've been toying with this frustration of blindfolds and how do we blindfold students, etc., for years. And you can order anything on Amazon. I even put down jokingly "Women of the Night." Came up with a song rather than got some recordings of some group. But anyway, a few weeks ago I just put in sleeping masks. I figured that was the closest thing to a blindfold. And lo and behold, the first pack I bought was 10 for $9, and then I went back to buy more because I tried these in class, and I said, everybody just keep it. I don't want to collect them back, but bring them with you in the future. Then I scrolled down a little bit, and you can get 25 for $17.95. Okay, you can't beat that price. So each one of you is going to get your own personal blindfold. Yes! So, I'm going to ask you to team up again. Okay, and the only safety rule is you have to execute techniques slowly. Okay, because if you go at normal speed and you are wearing these, you're going to end up moving a lot faster than you normally might anticipate, and you could injure your uke. Okay, so you're going to come out again, and I'm just going to have you do, a basic teinagi hand throw, but I want you to try to do it blindfolded. Okay, and the mask is the easiest thing to put on. For those of you who are wearing glasses, I recommend you take the glasses off, or you put the glasses on over your blindfold, whatever makes you happy. Okay, so come out again with your partner. And I want to just do a basic teinagi hand throw. Okay, you have no distractions. Anything else in terms of using the blind. How about making sure the technique is set correctly? Now you have to realize you guys are upper belts and you should know how this, so there's kind of a, okay, so if you do this with newer students, okay, number one, it's a quick way to get them to realize they don't have to look at the attacker's face. And the sooner you can break them of that habit, the faster they're going to learn. Okay, and at how cheap these things are, like maybe 50 cents a piece. Okay, I'm not going to collect these from you. Okay, you take them home and save them as mementos, or give them to your significant other or what. But the other thing that they do is that they make you work on developing an awareness of how the technique feels when it's setting it up, execution, without relying on your vision to do this. Okay, so you can even do this for we're going to have to try to do it again just for a basic hip throw. And try coming. Now, this does not work. This does not work if a person hits you or swings a knife at you or stuff. It doesn't work on no contact techniques. Although there is a type of thing you can get into if you can do it with upper belts, and it's a skill that some people get pretty good at in terms of sensory awareness of what's coming at them, even though they can't see it. Maybe we'll do that Sunday morning if we have time, because we got 2 teams of 3 or 4, and that's all you really need. So what I'm going to have you do again is put the blindfold back on, do a couple hip throws. Okay, then we'll get some feedback from you on those. Okay, and I want to go on with this a little bit. Okay, so let's try that. The uke here on a hip throw, and you were also wearing a blindfold. What would your greatest apprehension be?
How far away the ground is.
Okay, how far away the ground is, and once you're in the air,
Where do you stand?
where is the ground? Okay, and it's only, those are the only 2 reasons why you don't put the mask on the uke. Okay, it's a safety concern. Otherwise, the execution of the technique, if you can do kate no nagi, it'd be fine to have the mask on, both once they've made physical contact. Okay, but for any throws, any technique, you don't want the uke wearing a mask. It's a safety, it becomes a serious safety hazard. Yes?
Yeah. For more advanced students, would you still say the same thing, that you wouldn't put the mask on?
I would say the same thing. Just if they want to do it on their own, fine. But not in my dojo, because I'm not going to deal with the liability issue if someone gets hurt and they, you had masks on both of them, huh? Yeah, to me it's a dojo, it's a liability issue where I know there's a possibility that they could really hurt themselves seriously, and I went ahead and let them do it anyway. And no release is going to protect you from
because the reason I ask is that every time I've actually fallen for real,
right,
I have no idea where the ground is or anything. You might as well have had a blindfold on. To this day, I can't recall where the ground is. You just know where it is. For most upper belts, you kind of know where the ground is, and you're going to slap, and you're going to be okay 95% of the time. But because there's that 5%. Okay. And it's particularly if you're dealing with kids, it's that that becomes a real safety issue. And I'm not going to do anything with my students that I feel really seriously puts their safety at risk. Last night, Michael Langewisch, he'll be here tomorrow. He brought some what do they call them? Vision. Drunk goggles that replicate different levels of alcoholic intoxication, and people were doing some techniques with under
under the influence of various levels of alcohol based on their vision, and it really messed up their techniques because you lost your perception of where the person was really and how your attacker was moving. So there are other ways to do this, but I just wanted to present this to you as a way that you could maybe help your students get out of looking at their uke's faces. Okay, now, the other part of looking where you're going is, once you solve the problem is, I'm not going to look at your face anymore, okay, now where do you look, okay, and it comes back down to look where you are going, not where you off in some other direction. Let me borrow poor Justin here because he's the lowest rank and he gets to suffer right now. No, okay, okay. And that means if you're doing a hand throw when you come in, where do I want to end up looking? What?
I would go behind you and around this way.
Okay. You're saying that I want to look down into the ground.
Well, yeah, you're sitting around this way.
Okay, yeah, you want to be looking where you ultimately want to end up. And if I could turn my head around completely, so what I want you to do this time when you come out is take the time, do the technique slowly, but look. You need to look beyond where this person is going, because when you're doing any technique, if you're using the concept of the circle, your uke is only going to go this far. If you stop your technique at where you think he's going to go down, and that's where, again, where students have problems. You will tell the student will end up at your feet. So they think, okay, I can stop here, he will go. Okay? No go. Okay? Okay? Because you have to continue and look, you have to continue that circle beyond the execution range of the technique. Because when you do it fast on the street, what happens then? Whether or not the person does a nice fall, what happens? Hand throw, what happens? What is the technique designed to do?
Prepare to take off and do it that way?
Well, that way, when you're done, yeah. But what is the technique designed to do?
Injure your opponent.
What?
Injure your opponent.
Injure your opponent by doing what? If you're doing a tenagi or kotegai correctly, what is it supposed to do to the attacker?
Dislocate their wrist.
What?
Dislocate their wrist.
Dislocate or break their wrist. Okay? That's why they have to go through the movements even slowly, because that is part of the technique. Okay? If you're doing your joint locks properly on the street at a reasonable speed, which is a lot faster than you're doing in class, you're going to injure this person. That's what the technique is designed to do. And that's another thing students don't realize, is that the hand throw is not meant to bring the person down to the ground. The hand throw or shoulder lock or takedown or wrist lock takedown or elbow roll takedown are all designed ultimately to injure the attacker. That's not your intent, that's just what happens. Mainly because they're resisting. So what I want you to do is, again, just come out and do a basic hand throw, but I want to see, and then we're going to go back to your thing here, because I don't want to ignore that. But what I want you to do is to make sure that you are looking all the way around, and you don't have to bend over either, okay? All the way around as far as you can. Look where you are going. Not where he's going, because he's only going to here. I'm going another 90 degrees. Okay? So you want to make sure you look where you're going. I know where he's at. I mean, as a black belt, you know where he's at. And one of the hardest things to convince students is that if you do the technique correctly, they will end up at your feet. Almost every time. Okay? I know Don Sonaru's been big on that for decades. Okay? But it's hard to get students to understand or accept. But if they do the technique right, that's where he is. You don't need to look to see if he's there. You'll know it.
before we transition this to judo type throws, which creates some other issues, I want to deal with the technique both of you guys are using. Let me borrow Peter, okay. And the technique I see you doing, wrist grab, and you're coming around.
It's see the monkey.
See the monkey?
Yeah, because this is a mirror.
Right.
I'm the monkey. I see the monkey. Okay. Here, he's off balance.
Okay. Okay. I just it's here, come around, and then you're getting to here. Okay. And what I'm seeing you do, okay, and is at some point you're clamping on, coming in tight, clamping on, and then you're turning this down, or you're stepping back and turning it down this way.
Turning both down.
You're turning both down. Okay. Now, I'd like to suggest a variation you might want to try. Get back here. You're in here, you come in here, this is fine. Okay. This hand, instead of clamping down and turning this, is you want to just slide this in as far as you can.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do.
And my pressure, rather than being on my hand and holding on, is actually on the back of his hand. Okay, yeah, so you're going like, you stupid sucker, what are you trying to do? Okay, and the pressure, as you're doing your technique, rather than being here and holding this in tight and trying to get this whole thing to go, is you're just putting the pressure on the back of his hand, okay, and then just pivoting yourself back. Once it sets up, and all I have to do is step back and the technique works. Or step around, not step back. Okay? Which is another problem that a lot of new students will have. You're not done yet, Peter.
Yes, sir.
Okay? And this actually is if you tell them to pivot their left leg back, okay, they've come in, they've done this, and you tell them, and part of it is the instructor's fault, because we say pivot the left leg back. So what do? They pivot the left leg back. And they wonder, why isn't the technique working? And what we as instructors should be saying is pivot your left leg back and around and turn to your left. Okay, so some of the problem is that we don't communicate correctly with our students. Okay, so I was mainly concerned with that part, because I think
Well, the thing is, as they move down, is that you slide in so far,
right.
and then you got this triangle of the arms as you make the turn.
Right, but all I'm saying is, and it's an argument, is you're coming into here and then you're clamping on and turning this whole thing, and I'm kind of like what you're saying is I'm doing this kind of slide thing, and it requires a lot less muscle on my part.
Right.
So
Here, grab him. I'm going to try to do what you got to do. Right here, and then I slide in and clamp on.
No, slide.
slide in as far as you can.
Just kind of relax your hands, and now just do a whole rotation of
Right, but right here,
But you lose.
right here, it's much like grabbing a punch.
Correct.
I've given you something to
You
resist
lose.
against.
Yes, keep sliding that towards me.
But I've given you, so even if I do this, I've given you something to resist against. That's why I was able to go around, as opposed to here, if I come straight across, you're going down like 10 times faster.
Yeah, it's just a,
Let's grab as I'm sliding down.
right, slide. Now continue that slide as you turn,
Yes.
and the turn, and you don't have to grab on. That's all I'm saying.
I was just stopping with him.
Oh.
It's like a slide on a gun. I'm sliding.
Okay.
This is my slide.
Okay. So I guess it's a matter of the illusion is that you're getting to this point and then clamping on.
Lock on. I'm trying to.
Okay.
I just curl the hands, and that becomes the.
Okay. So rather, I'm doing it this way, and you're doing it this way.
Yes.
Okay. So it's all whether the fingers are straight or bent.
You got to keep the pressure against the back of the hand.
Correct. Okay. Okay. Moving right along. We're going to have you. Let me borrow Peter here again. We're going to do just a basic hip throw. Okay. Or if you want, you can do a hari goshi. Or if you're really crazy, you can do a hari makikomi. No one at our age does a hari makikomi.
I don't mind
Doing it. It's a poor uke. Did support uke, okay, and just grab hold, okay, whatever you're going to do, okay, and I'm going to come in, do my harigoshi, and take him over, and the problem is, if I just look down, okay, if I just look down, first of all, he's going to end up over there, okay, to my side, okay. Secondly, if I look down, get back up again, and if I look down and come in and just do this and look down, okay, he's not going to go anywhere, okay. Number two, what?
And he'll tend to grab.
They'll tend to grab onto you. The other problem is if you're going down and bending, step back a bit. If you go down and you're just doing this, this is using your back muscles, which is not good for your back muscles. And you know that any time you use back muscles for any judo throw, you're doing it wrong. Okay, so you'll find if the student turns and does that circle again, okay, and we're going to work with this a minute because, again, a lot of new students will come in, they'll set this up, they'll come in tight, okay, they'll get up here, and then they turn, okay, and see, now he's in front of you. Again, you look where you're going, not where he is going, okay. The worst that's going to happen is you're going to lose your balance. I tell my students, you're going to lose your balance and you'll end up falling on your attacker. That's why you're putting him in front of you, so you have something soft to land on. Okay. Okay. So, what I want you to do is just do, first of all, do a couple koshinagi, easy, just pulling over and looking down, and then, because we as instructors tend to forget a lot of this, how the student actually feels and what they're physically doing wrong, okay, and then try a couple where you're actually rotating, and then we're going to add one more item to that to make most judo throws work more effectively, okay. So get your partner to do a couple of hip throws, koshinagi, basic, take your time where you're bending over, or you can bring them over and just stop your turn when you're looking down, and then do a couple where you're just turning completely, and note every time where your uke lands. Okay? Very good. Have you tried it? A couple things happened when you stopped and just looked down. You found you were using a lot more back muscle. Okay? A lot more. You found that there's a greater tendency to stop because you're using a lot of back muscles and it's not comfortable. You also found in a couple cases that if you did this, because his momentum, if you're going over, his momentum is going outward and forward, you had to take a step with your left foot to maintain your balance. Okay? Okay. And that's because you end up throwing him forward rather than bringing him around to in front of you, okay? And once you were able to do that rotation, okay, you found you weren't using your back muscles, or not as much. He was ending up in front of you. You were staying balanced. You didn't have to move your feet. Okay, and so again, this is something where you can practice with your students, have them practice, look where you are going, and they're going to find, oh my God, Sensei, this technique is so easy. Okay, why didn't I think of this before? Okay, and part of it is they're still trying to learn the technique. But you've got to get this stuff early on so that it doesn't become entrenched. One of the problems I have on the videos is sometimes people, when they video test, they want to start at purple or brown belt, and they are making so many core mistakes that my evaluation just totally frustrates them. Because my goal, the goal is, regardless of how you're teaching students, is to, if they have a problem, you deal with it as soon as you find it. You don't let it become entrenched, and then when now they're going for black belts, it's, oh, you've got a real serious problem with this technique, and no, you're not going to get your black belt because, and they're just going to walk out the door. If they see that you're interested in them and you want them to do well without being a mother, okay, you can't suffocate the student. You can't continually be on their case.
You only want, if they're having a problem, you only work on one problem at a time, not, well, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this wrong. Last night we came up with six things to make nerve techniques easier to do. That was a class last night. And when I summarized, I could only think of 4 or 5 of them. I know all 6, but the thing is, if you pile too much on a student, they get frustrated, they'll give up. Okay, so and the same thing deals with, you know, if when you have kids, you only, if they're screwing up on something, you find one thing to get them to correct on, and then you can come and pick up on the other stuff later on if you have to. Yes?
One thing I found with the beginning students who are more basic and the look where you're going is if they're doing a hip throw with somebody, they still look at them like this. They
Yes.
don't even turn their head.
Yes, yes.
They still look at them like this.
They're still looking at them.
You have to watch them right from the start.
Right, yeah. Are you trying to kiss him or what? You know, I mean, you don't say that because that's embarrassing. Yes, but...
And the other thing that we didn't have, I watched a video of a guy's class, and I hope I haven't done this, but he made the correction. Before the student did the correction, he's over here correcting these 2 guys.
Yeah.
So making that correction, stay long enough to see that they attempt
Yes,
the correction.
yes, that's really critical. You have to, you can't say make your correction, go walk off. One of the things you have to realize in teaching any martial art is that you are teaching skills that your students do not have, and they are starting out essentially from 0. And so you have to keep an eye on them. Okay, and that's why, you know, there are some techniques, you know, if there are 20, 30 people in here, there's some techniques I could say, okay, all of you get up and practice this. But even Seki, and we had a mat area about 4 times this size, 3 to 4 times this size, and he could get 8, 10 teams up doing judo throws. But if he was teaching something, he'd say 4 teams. Or 6 teams, black belt, watch those 2. Because you have to have that, you have to be able to supervise the students to the extent where you can pick up where they're doing something wrong and work with one while the other 3 are doing their thing. Okay, and you can't really do that safely if you've got 8 or 10 teams up or 12 teams up and everyone's fighting for space among other things. Okay, let's go on here. Let me borrow Justin here again. Okay. The other thing, and as students get higher in rank, now we're talking, okay, 4th Q, 3rd Q, purple belt, brown belt, okay, there is still a tendency, and a lot of it comes down to, because we as instructors do a hit for the fun of it, okay, we as instructors are trying to show the technique correctly, so we tend to come in and we set this up, and then we set up and we do our technique, okay, hunky-dory, okay. The problem is, and there's nothing wrong with the way this technique is being shown, okay, except it's a lot of work, okay. Why is it a lot of work? Does anyone know why? He's going to come in. I'm going to show it again. You come with a hit. I block the hit. I come in. I set up nicely. I'm nice and tight. I'm set properly, and I get him off the ground. What am I doing wrong? What's the problem with the technique?
Softball is kazushi, so you're doing all the up.
Okay. Because, yes, I have stopped his kazushi, okay? He just, you know, and he stops, okay? And one of the hardest things to get even the purple and browns to realize is that you need to help this person go where they are going. And you need, and if you do the technique and you start this circular movement before you come in, and you can get hold of him, and you're wearing judo gi, and as I say to my students, you tear your judo gi, I get you a new one for free, because I will just send it back to the company and I know they'll replace it. Okay, how many judo gi have I lost in 48 years? 2. And it's usually because the seam came undone, something like that, not because the sleeve got ripped off. Okay, they have to learn to be aggressive with how they grab. Okay,
We are not dealing with some really fine, flimsy material, okay, you know, that's kind of ethereal in nature, okay. They have to grab the material. If you're on the street and you throw the person and they're wearing a t-shirt and you grab their t-shirt, they're on the ground, their shirt is ripped off and in your hands, that's intimidating. That's what you're after, okay? That's how, you know, tough. The shirt got torn, okay? But you're on the ground, I'm standing here looking at you and saying, what would you like me, no, whatever. But the point is, you have to get the circle going. You have to start looking where you're going before you've made contact. So what I want you to do, and you can practice this, we call this either, if we do it fast, it's called kukonagi, quick throw, okay? If we're doing it where we're pulling, it's called hiki, or hikiwaza, H-I-K-I, okay? It's just an added phrase that can be added to any technique, and the student knows that it's a pulling technique. But what they have to realize is that with any throw, even if you're doing judo, when you're coming in, you can't come in and set this up this way. You have to pull them into you, because if you pull them and you're turning, number one, you don't have to do as much footwork. And jiu-jitsu people are incredibly lazy. Okay. The second thing is he comes in here and you pull and you turn him. The technique is a lot easier to do because you've got all this momentum going before you have even made contact. Okay. And that's a separate skill in itself. It's kind of like he comes in for a hit, I block, I come here, I set this up, and then I decide to turn. Okay. It doesn't work that way, okay? If he comes in, it's going to be here, around, and go. I have to get myself moving before I set the technique where he's ready to throw. So what I want you to do is, again, because we can all do this reasonably well. We've been doing it for decades, centuries, okay? But I want you to get back to where the student is and see how they do it, and then compare it how you would ideally like to see them do it. Okay? Now, the downside of doing things hikiwaza, or with a pulling technique, is that students tend to execute techniques faster. It's natural. Last night we had a student went for his green belt. He didn't do that. He passed the green belt exam, just made it. Okay? 93 required to pass, he got 93. Probably out of the kindness of the other black belt in my heart. Okay? We then went to the blindfolds. What?
The beer goggles.
No, not with the beer goggles?
Yeah.
The beer goggles?
Yeah.
He did a phenomenal hand throw. He did a fantastic hip throw.
Did a turn?
Yeah.
Head throw?
Yeah, it was just...
And he had the super drunk ones on.
Yeah, he had the super drunk ones on, you know. I mean, the guy, it was beautiful to watch him. And everyone in the class complimented and said, you know, the test looked like garbage compared to what you did when you were drunk. We got to get some beer in you. Now, he's only 16, but anyway. But the point is, if you're not looking at this person, you can do things surprisingly fast. Okay, and that's where another problem comes up, is that once they get good at this, they need to start worrying about their attacker, their uke in class, because if you do techniques too fast, things break. So what I want you to do is I want you to come out, I want you to try it a couple times, just killing your momentum as you come in, okay? And then I want you to try it a couple times with the hikiwaza, or the pulling technique, where you're starting your circular motion, whether it be hand throw or hip throw, whatever technique you're doing, before the hold is actually set. Okay, because you can't set the hold and then start turning. Okay, you have to have this going. So I want you to try this a couple, 3 times a piece. Okay, look where you and I'll borrow Peter here, okay, just for the fun of it. What this comes down to is when you're doing the circular motion, okay, you've got 2 y-axes here, yours and his, okay, and any technique is going to work only, ideally, only if there is one y-axis. Okay, there has to be one center point. Okay, so when you come in, and if you're going to do this one here, and you're coming and you're in loose, okay, and you're trying to do a technique, you've got all this space here. Okay, but junior high kids would call it crotch space, but that's, we've all had the explanation for that. Okay, when you're doing any technique, even if it's a hit, and you're coming in to do a hand throw. As I come in and do this, where is my y-axis? It's where his is or his was. Okay, you've got to come in to move them. You have to move their y-axis. Okay, and so if it's a hip throw, you want to any type of coming. If you're coming in here and you've got You've got to have the solid contact, whether you're grabbing here, under the arm, or anything. You've got to have the solid body contact. And the reason you pull him into you is so that you can get that solid contact, and so that your y-axis becomes his y-axis. And that's what makes the throw possible. Okay, any throw. A hit, here, wrist lock takedown, okay. It's still, I'm moving into, I've destroyed his y-axis, I have replaced it. See where my foot is? It's not out here. Okay? I've come in. Now I can do whatever part of the technique I want to. Okay? And that's part of the look where you are going. Is that your y-axis has to be in control. Okay? So as I said, part of it, look where you're going, is because if you are looking where you are going and you rotate and you pull, there is no way you can avoid that from happening. It's the way it goes. Okay, you've destroyed his Kazushi. Okay, and you're set to do the technique. If he comes in for a hit, here, and I'm in. I'm sorry, I don't want you to go down yet. I want to show the technique. You go down too fast. Okay. Okay. He worried about CYA. Yes. Okay. If he wants to come in here, okay, I can't do this from out here and reach in. Okay. I have to, if I'm going to block, I have to step in, ideally, and set this up. Okay. And now my y-axis, and and where am I looking? How many directions can you go with this technique? What? You've got 180-degree range on this technique. It all depends on
Where you want him to go.
not where you want him to go, where you want to turn. Better word than that. Another four-letter word. Well, actually, it was the first word of what the topic of this whole thing is. Poor guy. Look, okay? If I look this way, he's going to go this way. If I look this way, he's going to go that way. Okay? Look where you are going. And one of the things you can work with some of the upper belts is, rather than saying, okay, this technique, traditionally, yeah, it's supposed to go back downward, life is good. They need to start realizing that, hey, they can come around and go. They've got 180-degree range here, or maybe even 270.
Because you have him tight.
Yes.
So the two of you are one.
Yes.
So he will go wherever you go. So whatever you're physically capable of going is where he's going.
Yes.
And what's great about that is that your circle is smaller than his because
yes.
you're the center. So even though he wants to go wherever you want to go because you're connected, you are one, he can't physically do it.
Right.
Which is what makes it work.
It makes it work, and what ultimately happens to him, if you do the technique normal speed, he gets injured.
Can we see that?
No. Okay. And one of, as I said before, one of the most difficult things for students to understand, because we don't want our students to run home and say, "Mommy, he just taught us how to break someone's shoulder," and then next week they come home, "Mommy, he taught us how to break someone's wrist." The next week, "Mommy, he taught us how to break someone's leg." There's only one extremity left. You're not going to break my neck. Okay. Part of the problem with traditional jiu-jitsu, okay, is that every type of joint lock is designed not to submit a person. Okay. And we do this out of courtesy in class, do the hand throw, and we bring them down, and we go, "Ah!" And we do it nice and gentle, okay? And what a lot of students don't realize that if you were to do this at full speed, you would break their wrist, okay? And at some point, we have to get our students to understand that any submission, any joint lock you do is ultimately designed to break or dislocate or sprain or damage that joint and keep the attacker from attacking further. Okay? That's hard for people to accept. We don't like to, the same problem occurs in the military. You're training soldiers to kill people. But even so, killing a person is a tremendously, I can't think of the word, when it happens, is, lack of a tremendously emotionally jarring event. Okay? And the same thing happens on the street. I've had students that have unfortunately had to use this stuff on the street. They come back and said, "I broke his wrist. Am I going to get in trouble? I broke his arm. He got a concussion." One of my first black belts, guy attacked him one of his friends attacked him in the park at night. Of course, he was stupidly walking through the park at night. His friend jumped him from behind, threw him, gave him a concussion, permanent brain damage. And it was hard, it's hard for the student once you do something on the street and it works, they can't believe that they injured the person. And then you have to say to them, "Yeah, that's what the technique does. And it's not your fault because he attacked you." Okay? He attacked you. You are the victim.
I almost broke somebody's arm. I was carrying a briefcase, leaving the office, and stopped at a light. And this guy comes and just grabs my arm and briefcase, and I didn't resist or pull back. I was just shocked. I didn't know what was going on. I just accepted and took it as the briefcase went up. I was under his arm, and all of a sudden I look at this guy, and it's like, "Oh, that's Kurt from my office. I better not go." He didn't understand. He didn't understand his wrist or elbow was about to go, depending on how he was reacting.
If you move your body, it's amazing how fast the techniques will work. And so when I say look where you are going, it ultimately raises a lot of other issues with students. Okay, the effectiveness of the technique. Yes, the technique may look more sloppy if you're doing the hikiwaza part, but you're still doing it correctly. Yes, you're going to injure the student, the attacker, if you do it properly and they don't know how to fall or what have you. And these are things, nothing works in isolation. You have to be able to talk with the students about all these things so they're aware of it. Okay, and I've had parents sometimes ask about the release. You mean that someone can get hurt in this class? And I don't want to say. I'll just say yes. I won't say duh, because they'll walk out the door, rightfully so. But do students get hurt on occasion? Yes, they do. Okay, Is it serious? On a very rare occasion, yes it is. Okay? But I will do my best to protect your student from getting hurt, which is why the safety rules are posted up here, even though we're all black belts. Okay? It's a CYA because I know from being a public school teacher, one of the questions that came up at one point when a student was injured is, are the safety rules, even though they're in the handbook, are they posted in class? I said, yep. Okay, and they were happy. Okay. Now, for those of you, because one of the problems I've learned in the process of doing the, and this is not related to this thing, in trying to do the responsible instructor program, is that I've had some instructors say, well, I work at a Y, or I work at a park department, or yada, 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 and I can't put anything up on the walls. Well, I can't put up anything on the walls in here either. Okay? So what I did when I went to when we started the program years ago, is I went to these things, and these come out of class and they're put away. Okay? So you've got your posters up, and we have another one that has all the belt requirements on it. Okay? So there's a way of getting the material out there for students to see, even though you are in a room or facility that isn't going to allow you to, quote unquote, put anything on the walls. As long as you have some place to store your mats, and and I know your mats are available for anyone to see.
Yeah.
And use.
Including glitter.
Yeah. Including what?
Glitter.
Yeah. Oh, you bet. We had that a few weeks ago here. It was horrible. We get glitter. We have a glitter attack almost every summer. But they're not using our mats. And you can have some of your stuff up on the wall in there, or it has changed.
Censored.
They've been censored.
Yes, we can have some things up there, but things like that we can't.
Yeah. So again, this may be, would you have to go to your administrative leadership, so to speak, and say, I know I can't have any things up on the wall. I understand that. Is it possible to have a display board that I bring in or take out with me? And you can have those basic things on that display board. The students will really appreciate it, because my students don't bring their handbooks. They go up there on the other one. It's got all the belt rank requirements. They can look and say, "Sensei, can you teach this next week?" Okay, so it's a way of getting around. If you deal with bureaucracies a lot, you learn how to do that out of your own. As a teacher, you learn how to do that out of your own survival and desire to have an enriched environment for your students. That's my rationale. Okay, but no, you find ways around, and I can see the rationale. You don't want every group that uses a facility to have their stuff up all over the walls. Okay. The other side of the coin is you want to have your students see that you have some stuff beyond what you're saying, and so that's a workaround. That was not supposed to come up today. Anyway, I'm out of my time. Okay, so we're going to take a break now for about 10 minutes. We do have cold water, cold Gatorade,